Welcome to Everyday Counseling, a podcast about understanding emotional patterns as they show up in everyday life. In this episode, we'll cover why some arguments keep repeating, why the topic is rarely the issue, and why certain disagreements never seem to fully resolve. You might recognize this pattern immediately. It starts the same way, it sounds the same, it ends the same. And afterwards, there's often a sense of, we've had this conversation before. Sometimes, many times. It might be about something small on the surface: time, effort, communication, who did what, who didn't, who did this, who did that, when they did or didn't do it. But intensity doesn't match the topic. That's usually the first sign. Repeating arguments are rarely about the visible issue. They're about something underneath that hasn't been fully understood or expressed. For example, one person says, "You never listen to me." The other one hears criticism and responds, "That's not true, I do listen." Now the conversation becomes about evidence, examples, defending positions. But underneath the first statement might mean something else. I don't feel heard. I don't feel important in that moment. I feel dismissed. If that underlying feeling isn't recognized, the argument doesn't resolve, it just pauses. So the next time something similar happens, even in a different situation, the same feeling returns and the same argument begins again. You might see this with a partner, where one person raises concerns repeatedly and the other becomes defensive quickly. One pursues, the other withdraws. The more one pushes, the more the other pulls back. Both feel justified. One feels ignored, the other feels criticized. Neither feels understood. So the cycle continues. With siblings, it might show up in the same dynamic from years ago. One takes things personally, the other becomes defensive. The roles stay consistent even as life moves on. With parents, it might be a repeated feeling of not being recognized or respected, even when the conversation is about something practical. With friends, with friends, it might be a pattern where one person feels they are always the one making effort and the other feels pressured without fully understanding why. At work, it can show up in a repeated tension with the same colleague. You know that colleague I'm talking about. Not because of the task, but because of how communication is interpreted each time. What repeats is not just the argument, it's the emotional position each person takes. Over time, these positions become familiar. You expect the other person to respond in a certain way. They expect the same from you. So both of you enter the conversation already prepared. The preparation limits flexibility. Even if the words change slightly, the direction has already been set. Another reason arguments repeat is that resolution is often surface level. Someone apologizes, the moment's settled, the tension reduces. But the underlying feeling is not explored. So nothing actually shifts. It's like pressing pause instead of stop. There's also timing. Some conversations happen when one or both people are already tired, stressed, or distracted. This makes it harder to go deeper. So the discussion stays where? At the surface. And surface conversations tend to repeat. Breaking this pattern doesn't start with finding better arguments. Guess where it starts? It starts with recognizing what keeps returning. Not the words, the feeling. What is the moment actually about for each person? Until that is named, the cycle does what? Woohoo! It continues. Join me in the next episode. We'll explore how people begin interrupting these repeated patterns and what changes when conversations move from reaction to understanding.